Here.
Alderman Jacob.
Here.
Alderman Winger. Alderman Catalano.
Here.
Alderman Sismarski.
Here.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
Here.
Alderman Woods.
Here.
Alderman Eugene Wesley.
Here.
Need approval for the minutes of July 15th, 2013.
So move.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Second, I have a report and recommendation for official or elected official conduct policy.
May I take that? Sure. I just handed out a little, I put this together. The picture, that's not Jeff, I'm not sure he's that flexible, but the picture on the front was to bring a little bit of levity to to a very serious subject. I mean, if our city council meetings look like that at the end of them, then everybody's doing their job. But one of the things that comes up periodically in the course of governance between the relationship between the council, staff, and the public. And those are three components of really the same wheel, if you will, three cogs in the same wheel. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that, you know, there's a team concept, there's a structure to the process, and essentially you as the elected officials, the city of Wooddale is a municipal corporation, okay? It means that it has a board of directors, that's you, you're an elected board of directors. You work through a CEO, that's your city manager. A city manager has other people that he works, that work with him. Your constituents are essentially the shareholders, the stockholders in the city. And that's by design. That's how it's designed by state statute, is to be established that way. And some could argue, well, they didn't have another model, so when they created units of government, that seemed to be the best because they knew corporations existed, so let's put it in there. But one of the things that makes a corporation successful, many of you have your own, many of you worked at corporations, various sizes, small to large, is to have an effective inner workings between the three different components. And that's important in the success of the organization. But when you get to a municipal corporation, it's critically important because there are certain statutory lines in the sand that are drawn that can't be overstepped, and there are certain statutory functions that have to be performed by each of those, your CEO and his staff, and by the council. So, the reason for the rules and codifying the rules, and I know we've had some discussion and debate to say, wait a minute, we have a city code that's this thick. I have law books in my office that are full of different different rules, regulations, and laws that have to be complied. Do we really need additional rules and regulations? To that I say yes, because what you're talking about, and when we get to the draft rules, is you're looking at sort of the meat and potatoes on the skeleton. The state statute gives you parameters of what you can do and what you cannot do. And essentially the law says if it's not provided for by statute, you can't do it. It's prohibited. And that's the way you read a municipal code. So you are a creature of statute. As a creature of statute, you have only those legal powers and authorities that are set forth in law, that are set forth by statute. So the question is, how do you go about exercising those powers, being respectful of this corporate structure or setting, if you will, to do that? And so that's kind of why we want to codify the rules. So one, everybody understands it, because we've got aldermen of varying tenures on this council, including the mayor. Some have been here longer, some have been here shorter. So some have been on other boards, some have never served on another board. So you come with varying degrees of experience, and so what this is designed to do is say, wait, let's get a unified set of rules. That unified set of rules is going to govern the way that we as a council act and interact among ourselves and with our staff. What can we do by statute? What are we prohibited by statute from doing? So the argument that we've got, a lot of rules, a lot of regulations, do we really need more? I think what you're doing is you're providing some clarity to the rules that you've got. And by doing so, everybody's on the same page. You're singing from the same song sheet. You know, okay, these are the rules. There's no question about it. I have 3 kids. I tell my 3 kids the one thing, and I've got a 18-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 9-year-old. They hear it differently, and they respond differently. So, but when I write them out and say, here's what it is, they all know what the rules are, and there's no question about how those rules are going to be imposed. So the fact of the matter is, you should have a codified, that's why we codify the municipal code, that's why your city code is codified, so that everybody's on notice. The public's on notice, the elected officials are on notice, and staff's on notice as to what type of interaction, what type of conduct are we going to have, and what type of interaction, what type of conduct is going to be prohibited. So to those who would suggest, one more set of rules, is that really going to do the trick? I suggest, yes, it will. It'll provide a clarity and clarification of what you've got. So that having been said, I think you should be familiar. Yes, Alderman Woods. I feel like I'm at a Senate hearing. Yes, the.
Just highlighted the code because the chairman is supposed to.
Oh, I'm sorry. If the chairman permits, I'll respond.
Mr. Samarski. Pat.
Mr. Woods.
No, good.
Attorney Bond, I'm certainly one of the ones that say we don't need another layer of rules or another restating of the same rules. As I read through the stuff that you wrote, certainly you were a little more wordy, but most of the stuff is already either in our city ordinance, municipal ordinance, I have your book from 2 years ago. I have the one from the mayors and managers. I have state statute, and then Robert's rules. All those were directed to from city ordinance or state statute. And some of the statements you made, this is going to clarify everything. So, it almost sounds like you're going to settle the case before it ever went to court. I don't get it. All these things are in here and have already been stated in probably 3 different locations within one of these codes, ordinances, statutes, rules, public acts. What do you say to that?
Well, I was directed or requested to put together draft rules for the council's consideration, and that's what I've done. But to the extent, am I smarter than I was 2 years ago when I put the primer together than the authors of Robert's Rules of Order or the Illinois Municipal League? The answer to that is probably. But the reality of it is yeah, I think it's going to. I am trying to settle the case before it goes to court. That's exactly what I'd like to accomplish, because I think what you're looking to do is saying, what can we do to operate better? You're a team. You're all on the same team. So what do you do if if your quarterback needs some rest and you're his roommate the night before? You're not having a wild party because your quarterback needs to be rested up. So you're going to party somewhere else. You're going to keep that room quiet. If you do that in advance, it's going to enhance his performance the next day, presumably. But from your standpoint, what you want to do is you want to have, and again, these aren't the magic rules to be all and end all, but they do address things that I have seen. I've been practicing municipal law since 1984, and what I've put together are things that I've seen in other communities. I've seen them at the county level. I've seen them at park districts. I've seen them at fire districts. I've seen them at school districts. I've seen them at cities, villages, towns, and quite candidly, I've seen some of that here. So what the rules that I've assembled here for your consideration and discussion and debate is to address some of the operational impurities, if you will, that have happened. Some of the things that happen in the course of trying to make a smooth running city. These are some things that the council should be cognizant of, should be mindful of, and there are ways if you say, okay, I'm not sure, because you have the benefit of having all those. I'm not sure that everybody has had that opportunity. Robert's Rules of Order is a very complicated book. There's a cheater you can get online and so forth. But what I've tried to do is to simplify this, perhaps not as simple as you'd like, but to simplify it in a 3 and 2.5 or 2 1/4 page document that if somebody has a question, they can say, oh, okay, you're right. Or to the extent that somebody knows the rules and is willfully violating those rules, then the other members of the council can say, hey, Rule A, Rule B, Rule C, whatever of Section 2.07 says the following, and you really shouldn't be doing that, so don't do it anymore. So that's sort of the reason for it, is to give you not to give you another set of rules for the sake of giving you rules, but to take, because the municipal code has a whole host of different things that you cannot do, or the powers of the city. I haven't reiterated that. I'm looking at the ones that are more operational in nature. And if you want to take the sites out of them, take the sites out of them, we can simplify them, we can bullet point them, but I think those are really the critical ones.
Mr. Woods?
Again, I'm going to have to go back to, most of these things are already stated in one of these documents. As far as policing them, I think is where the issue is. I mean, as far as the council goes, the mayor's, correct me if I'm wrong, one charged with keeping decorum and everything at the council level. So those decorum's addressed in our city ordinance. You have it restated here, so if nobody does anything, the restating of these things is not going to do anything. I guess is my biggest point.
Mr. Bond?
Well, I agree. It's the devil's not so much in the details in this instance. What we're doing is we're putting them in one place. So the goal of this is say, here, it's all in one place. You don't have to look at the Illinois Municipal Code, Chapter 65. You don't have to look at the city code, various sections of what the alderman can do, a copy of which I've put in there, what the mayor's role is, what the manager's role and responsibility. So what I've tried to do in a brief 2.5 or 2.25 pages, say, I'm putting them all in one place, so you know what they are. But that's the first step, and that's why I broke down the outline as I did, because the first step is, is there a need for the rules? And then the next is, what are those rules? And thirdly, what are you going to do about enforcing those? What are the procedures? What's the process for the enforcement? And I'll tell you, of those three components, the last one is the most difficult, because it's a self-governing. The mayor controls the meeting. The mayor doesn't control the individual conduct of any alderman. He doesn't have that authority by statute. He doesn't have that authority by your city code. He has the ability to keep, and he can remove a council member if he thinks that they're out of order. He can remove them from the city council chambers and ask that they be removed. And just for clarification purposes, at the committee meeting, the chair has that authority. If there's someone gets unruly or out of control, the chair has the ability. That's under Robert's Rules of Order. That's under your committee structure. And that's under your code. So yes, is there a mechanism in place for maintaining the decorum of a meeting? No question about it. And we've really not had that problem. That hasn't been a problem that I've seen. I've seen other meetings where council wars have broken out. That hasn't necessarily been an issue here. The question is, who has the ability, the authority to control, police, if you will, the conduct of your fellow aldermen? The electorate does. They clearly have that authority, and they have that authority every 4 years to make that determination. But the law has to provide for, in the interim, who has that authority. And again, of the discussion we're going to have this evening, the most difficult one is going to be the enforcement aspect of that. Once you come to some consensus that, yes, we do think we need not more rules, but we need a clarification or a summarization or whatever you want to call it of our existing rules. Here's what is, so we come to that conclusion, and then we agree these are the rules, whether it's these or some version of these are the rules we want to adopt to govern our collective conduct. And then third, what are the procedures if someone violates those rules? And fourth, what is the punishment, what is the penalty? Punishment and penalty, you have very little latitude because there's censure, there is, you can be removed, physically removed from the discussion. And that's not just if you misbehave at a meeting, that's if you violated a rule. The law will allow for that person to be removed from and then you're ineffective as an elected official. If you can't speak on behalf of your constituents, you've lost the ability to be an elected representative, and that's what you are. So that will be so that's kind of set. So it's really going to be the process of how you, or procedures for violating those rules, I think is going to be the most difficult component of it. But I think in response to your question, maybe a long about way of getting there, but this is a summarization of those rules that are in existence in various locations, and they're consolidated into a singular document that is simple, it's straightforward, and it should put everyone on notice as to what the expectations are for each and every one of the elected officials.
Mr. Lazara?
Thank you. Pat, I actually like it. I like the idea of it because we all come from different walks of life, everyone that's up here. I don't have the time, and I'm probably not as smart as Alderman Woods, to sit there and go through all these documents. What I like is the fact that it's right here in front of me now. I'm not saying I agree with everything that's on here, but I like the fact that it clarifies it. Clarifies it for myself, who's basically background as a truck driver. Clarifies it for Tony here. Clarifies it for a guy that cuts lawn, and he does more than that. But what I'm saying is, the whole point is we all come from different walks. And so will the people that come after us. And I'm hoping that these rules are redundant, that they are already in there. Because if they're not, then you just made them up yourself. What I like the fact is that it clarifies it, that it comes in a booklet, that the next guy that comes and sits in this seat, you hand it to him, he reads it, he realizes there are rules. You don't have to dig for them. Here we are, we're presenting them. Now, it's very hard for me to sit up here and look at the punishment part of it because I'm punishing myself. So what I got to do with that, and I think we all have to do, is we got to take ourselves out of the picture when we are talking about punishment. This is just not for us. This is for the city. This is for the future. This is for if another truck driver comes up here and represents his ward, that he understands. And that's what I see here. I see this an understanding. And I am with Art. It's redundant, and I hope it is. So what I'm saying is that, yeah, we have, things to tweak, but I really think that this is an important document because of the clarification that it's offering to not just us, but guys like us, that we're not all lawyers, we're not all doctors up here. We're just people from the city that want to make this a better place. And if this clarifies it for the next guy, then I'm all for it. Thank you, Pat.
Go ahead, Pat.
And that's really, when you're having this debate, these are the rules that are going to govern your conduct collectively and future council's conduct. Because every one of you who sits up here raised your right hand, you took an oath of office, and you solemnly swore and affirmed that you will faithfully support the Constitution of the United States, Constitution of the State of Illinois, and the state statute, the rules, regulations, and ordinances of the city of Wooddale. Now, when you took that oath of office, maybe some of you were familiar with those, maybe some of you weren't. So you have an undertaking, statutory undertaking that you swore to an oath to, and you're bound by the terms of that oath. But that didn't tell you, that oath didn't set forth all of those things that fall within the scope of that. So that's what we're trying to do, is have this. So when you're having the debate and the discussion, you don't look at it as any individual, any person, any personality. Think of this, what's going to be good for the governance of this city now and in the future. And it's designed to not have a panel of lawyers, a dais of lawyers. It's designed because you're representative of the community. Now, if you lived in Manhattan you would be, maybe you'd be represented as lawyers and doctors and financial analysts and Wall Street guys. Maybe that's the community they're represented. But you've got a cross-section of people from all different backgrounds, and that's why we have a representative form of government, because you're familiar with the needs of your community, the needs of your constituents, and where they're coming from, because you experience the same thing. You live here, that's why there's a requirement, a residency requirement. That's why you have it. But the goal is to say, do these make sense? Does it make sense to have rules that govern it, to clarify those, to synthesize all of the different statutes that are out there, put them in one place in a easy, simplified, readily accessible form, and that you can look at, refer to. You can hand it to new aldermen that come on the board, and go from there. And that's the goal, at least. And I didn't make any of these up. They're all provided for by law.
Alderman Wesley?
I guess this question is to the city manager. Does our employee handbook and policies talk about talking to elected officials?
There's a chain of command policy, but nothing,
Yeah, there's nothing specific, a specific prohibition of talking to elected officials, but there is a provision in there when you've got an org chart and you've got a chain of command and how they're required to address matters. But I will tell you, that having been said, and we're dealing with this in another, not a city, but another unit of government, is, you see the people, whether you're at the bowling alley or whether you're at Christie's or any other place in town, you run into people, and you're gonna run into employees out and about in the course of your day, whether they're on duty or not on duty. So there's going to be interaction, there's gonna be discussion with them. How you handle that discussion is really going to be the key. If somebody comes to you with saying, I'm not getting the overtime I should be getting, talk to your supervisor. I don't like the conditions that I'm working under. Talk to your supervisor. There's a chain of command. It can go up the chain of command. There's a reason they're talking to you and not their supervisor. I'll tell you this, almost 100% of the situations I've experienced, because they think you're a softer touch than their supervisor. Otherwise, guess what? They'd go to their supervisor. Those of you who have kids on the council, you know which one of you is a soft touch. Your kid's going to go to the soft touch to get what they want. That's how it works. That's human nature. That's not just parents. That's everybody. You go to you go to whoever's going to be. So they're coming to you, and there's a certain part of you that says, and this is true whether it's an employee or a resident. You think, well, I got to do something. I'm in a position where I'm required to act, and I'm a leader, and I'm going to make something happen. And in those instances, you have to resist that urge and say, take it up with your supervisor. I'm sorry, there's nothing I can't help you. Take it up with your supervisor. Can you inquire of the manager and say, whatever happened, the guy said he almost cut his leg off, whatever happened to that? Yeah, the manager can look into that, but that's not something you should be involved in. They should take that and address it with their supervisor.
Okay, in return of that statement, we were able to talk to non-department heads before, certain departments. I take it everything will go through the city manager with these rules.
Well, everything by the current code goes through the city manager. If you look in your section here with the city manager, the city manager's got a pretty powerful role. We had a discussion earlier, the city manager is required to check out weeds or something, right? Under the city code. But he defers that, he delegates that power. And I think he's going to tell you is, no, you don't have to go through him for everything. Go to the appropriate department head, and he's okay with that. Don't go below the department head, absolutely not. You should not go below the department head. And you have to use your discretion, use your judgment. If this is an issue that Jeff Murmis, your city manager, should be addressing, then go to Jeff. If it's an issue that a department head can handle, go to the department head, and the department head is going to advise Jeff that he had contact from an alderman, not telling on you. They're just giving him so he's made aware of what's going on, and he can make, because Jeff has the requirement that he looks at this thing from, hovering at 3,000 feet. He's got to know what's going on in Public Works, at the treatment plant. He's got to know what's going on in code enforcement. He's got to know what's going on in the finance department, the police department. He's got to oversee all of that. So he needs to know about it, but you can go to him and he's not gonna know what the price of a bolt was for something. So, some of those answers are going to be, it may be a more efficient way of addressing it by going to the department head. But you have to decide, is it a department head issue or is it a city manager issue? But it's never below a department head grade, ever. So if you want to go through the city manager and have him tell you, fine, contact the John Forrest. If you feel more comfortable there, so you don't want to be afoul of the rules, so be it. But I think the manager's going to say he has faith in the council, that you're not going to abuse that privilege where John Forrest is getting a call at 7 o'clock on a Sunday night, or 5:30 in the morning on a Tuesday.
Are you done, or are you more?
One more question. If that's the case, some department heads don't answer their phones during business hours either. And I understand that they're busy. Sometimes I don't get a phone call back for 2 days. I mean, meanwhile, when I deal with a resident, I'm calling right away when I'm talking to that resident. I don't care if it's 4:30 in the afternoon or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I want them aware of it, so it'll be taken care of the next morning.
Mr. Buck?
But it may be an issue that can't be taken care of the next morning. It may be an issue that is a lower priority for the operation of the city. And that's the problem, is you as you sit up there, you say, here's the things we have to get done, but you don't know what is getting done on a daily basis. And, let's say you call John Forrest, and John Forrest has a stacked agenda for that day. He may not be able to alter that agenda to address this particular resident's concern immediately. Not to say he's not gonna address it, but he's gotta assess his priorities and put it in the scope of the priority. You have a main break, all hands on deck. We're taking care of the main break, and we're not looking at a more nominal issue.
But when I have to wait a couple of days for a phone call back from a department head, that's a problem. And if you can't address the problem the next day, then tell me when you're going to address it, so I could tell the resident.
Well, I don't think it's a problem if you don't get a call the next day, unless it's something that requires immediate attention. It may, the resident might want an answer right away. But you know what? I call General Motors because I have a clicking in my car. Nobody's calling me back the next day and say, here's the clicking, and I have, Helmet the mechanic letting me, telling me what's wrong with it. That's not realistic. But to the extent that if you get a department head who routinely is not providing you a response, even if the response is call you back and say, we'll look into it and we'll give you a report, then that's something you should address with your city manager and say, listen, I've called this department head and I can never get a hold of them during the day. And that's not such a bad thing, because that means that they're doing something else, they're working. But you say, I can never get a response less than 2 to 3 days. Let the city manager know that, and that's something he can look into. But I will tell you, if you're not getting a call back or you're not getting the issue addressed in 24 hours, I hate to say, but it's too bad. That just means that it wasn't the same priority for the operation of the city, which is his job, as it was to the resident who has to look at the eyesore next to him. Somebody left their garbage can out 2 days longer than they should have. Okay, that's not a high priority. For the resident, that's a high priority. For the operation of the city, that's a blip on Jeff's screen that barely even bubbles to the surface.
Mr. Murmas, you had something?
Basically, we're all strategic thinkers up here. We're all smart. We can tell when something's important, when something's not important. If a department head's not getting back to you in time, if it's an important issue, you've got my phone number. You can call me right away. If I'm not answering, which a lot of times I may not answer because my day is swamped, you've got, Wendy's number. She can email me, hey, emergency. Alderman Wesley has an emergency. You need to step out of your meeting and call him. For the most part, I think all can attest, when there's been emergencies, there's been priority issues, when things have been prioritized, those are always taken care of.
Eugene?
Let me ask you a question. When you have a private meeting with a city manager and your name comes out of the meeting and it gets back to a contractor that Alderman so-and-so made a complaint or anything like that, how does the council handle discipline action on a supervisor too, or is he hiring? I know he handles the discipline action, so if we call a department head and, like, going to the rules that you just said, you could call the department head, and all of a sudden, it comes back to, an employee comes up to you the next day and says, oh, thanks to you, Alderman Wesley, I had to do this dirty work. Well, whatever. I didn't order him to do the dirty work. I didn't give him direction. I went through a supervisor, which you just said, it could go through the supervisor. From here on, I have contacted, and Jeff could verify, I have contacted him 9 times in the past 3 days, okay, on issues. Because I'm not going through a supervisor ever again. I ain't going through anyone anymore, except the city manager.
Well, I guess I'll ask a rhetorical question is, what are you going to the city manager for? Your role by statute, Alderman Woods, if you want to follow along, we're in 65 ILCS.
Got it memorized, Pat. But a good
but-
teacher.
But it says, the powers of the city council shall be purely legislative, except as may otherwise be set forth in that article. Executive administrative powers are conferred are exercised only to the appointed official, the appointed official being the city manager. So if you have some issues or some complaints, you should bring those to the city manager's attention. But recognize your primary function is to legislate policy for this city. And that's what it is. So if the city manager doesn't get back to you, or he defers, he says, listen, that's an issue that is more appropriately handled by the police issues are real simple, because they're either law enforcement or not. That's an easy one where you go. But some of them might have, we have staff meetings every Monday, and we have interaction between, because there's some that have legal implications, some of them have zoning implications, and some of them have financial implications, or the same issue might be around. So we need the input of the finance director. We need the input of the city manager does, the input of the legal advisor. He needs the input of the zoning to figure out what the appropriate resolution is. So one, it might take some time to get an answer for you to digest the facts, or to actually find out what the real facts are, because sometimes we all know, people spin the facts in the direction most favorable to them. So the staff might have to do their homework, their investigation, and then come up with a game plan through a collective input from everybody, and then get a response to you. So, but to the extent that somebody says, I'm doing less work, if they say, why is this happening? And say, well, it was noticed by, should the alderman be referred to by name? I don't think so. But the alderman, the city council, and you can't act individually, you act as a group, and you should be referred to as a group. The city council doesn't like the way this project is going, it'd like to, pick up the pace. And so if somebody says, so now I'm working extra on this project and not on the one I liked because of you guys, well, that's too bad. That's their job. It's within the scope of their job. But no, you work as a unit, a collective unit, and anytime that anybody makes reference, it's to the city council as a body.
Mr. Woods?
First, that wasn't a sarcastic remark, was it? To follow along?
No, I was
Okay.
giving you the site, because
Little levity, just a little levity, Pat.
this was designed to be sarcastic, the picture, because it looks like everybody's having fun, right? That's what I thought we'd have, a little fun.
I want to go back to one of your earlier statements on, and I would agree with you, how much smarter you are than you were 2 years ago. So, that being said, 2 years from today, you're going to be a lot smarter again, right?
I think you're gonna I'll hit a cliff, and then I'll probably start losing it,
Well,
but I hope
well,
that, I hope to be the
probably,
case.
but, we may look back at this and go, this was not necessarily the correct thing to do. Again, I can't say it enough. I mean, it sounds, like I'm beating a dead horse, but they're already here. I mean, most of the stuff the book that you just gave me is all here in a nice city ordinance that I got a lot of grief for just getting a copy of. So I am one of the guys that read it. I think that that's part of my job. Do I expect everybody else to read it up here? No. But at the same token, the little bit I do know about law, I know that for years, we've tried to legislate ethics and morality, and without any level of success. So, again, anytime we try to restate something just for the purpose of restating it, just on that principle alone, I'm against it. If there was something new here with some meat and potatoes, and I'm not quite sure what we're even passing, the stuff that I got in my packet or the booklet that you gave me. So for starters, maybe either yourself or Jeff could clarify what it is we're trying to pass.
Sorry, Jeff.
Well, I'll let Pat address the second point, but to the first point, whether or not, Pat or I agree with what Alderman Woods is saying, the reason this is being brought before you is this was a request from a majority of your colleagues. So we understand that aspect of it, and maybe there's others on the board that agree with you, but the reason why it's being brought up was per the city council's request. So, and then the second point, I'll let Pat.
Yeah, what you're going to be considering will be that section 2.07, the rules of conduct. I just packaged it in such a way that if someone had some questions about where does this come from, or what's the, I divided it up by the, the need for the rules and the codification, what the current code provisions are relatives, just so you saw, as Alderman Lazara said, I didn't just make these up. What I've done is I've taken some existing codes and I've kind of, given a little bit of interpretation to those to make it you can implement it in such a fashion. So again, you've got a one source. You don't have to look at 3 or 4 different sources. It's all there. So at the end of the day, what you will be looking at if the consensus to go forward is to adopting rules, whether it's these or some modification of these rules. So maybe the first step should be for the chair to entertain a motion. Is there a motion to establish rules of conduct for the council? And then once you get a vote on that, then the next vote would be, or the next issue, if that fails, we'll get out of here early and call it a day. If that passes, then we move on to the next discussion is, what should those rules be?
Unfortunately, the problem I have with this whole thing is they are all in these books, and we still have people decide they do what they want. I mean, it's not one time. Mr. Lazar.
Pat, what we have here, as far as your council rules, and I'm just going to restate this again, is there anything that you put in here that isn't already in these books that Alderman Woods just presented on the diocese? Anything that you made up?
I think that's some of the stuff like
The answer to that is there's nothing here that's made up, but you do have some clarification under, like, for example, the decorum and council. Is that something that the mayor has the authority under state statute to maintain the decorum? Does it go into the detail I've gone into? The answer is no. But all of these are predicated upon state statute or your existing code provision that exists right now.
Yes. So maybe we should call this Wooddale City Council Handbook, because that's really what this is. This is kind of a handbook that is making it a clarification. Yeah, but Art, look at it, okay? Look at your book, look at this book. I'm a truck driver, you're a genius. All I'm saying is, I think this is something that the Art Woods of the world need. Don't need, okay? Right.
This is the chapter. This is one chapter.
How many pages you
This
got
is
there,
one-
Art?
This is like 15 pages.
Art, are you disagreeing that this doesn't make life simple for us?
I am, wholeheartedly, 100%.
Well, I'm sorry, buddy, but you're up here looking at it as you. I'm looking at it as me. I don't have the time. I don't have the knowledge that you have with law. And I'm sorry, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to come after me that don't. This, to me, clarifies it. This is a handbook. These aren't new rules we're adopting, are they? Maybe we should put one more. We should put a number 6, because I see there's 5, and we'll call number 6 common sense. I just don't understand the argument on against rules that already exist that are being handed to us in a simple form instead of like this, for the next guy, for me. Makes it a lot easy, guys.
And again, if you look at the second to last section, really what you're going to be discussing is that section 2.207, which consists of 2 1/4 pages. The other is to show you where these things came from, but that's not important, and if you wanted to delete even in those 2 1/4 pages, delete the statutory references, which aren't necessary. You don't need the statutory reference, and you just distill this down to here's the things that state statute prohibits you from doing, and here's how you are to conduct yourself pursuant to state statute in the Wooddale City Code. And you're adopting those, essentially be a page and a half of rules all in one place, easily digestible and easily referenced. If anybody has a question, or if you want to have a debate about it, you can look at and look to that. So that was the purpose of it, the booklet was designed to give you some of the background, but really the essence of what's being asked of you, or what I was directed, was put together these rules, and that consists of those 2 1/2 pages, 2 1/4 pages.
Mayor?
Pat, you keep talking about decorum and mayor's powers. I only have authority when we're in this room. If somebody gets out of order, I can swing the gavel and say, point of order. Out of this room, I don't have no control, correct? So, I don't know what you're trying to say. Go ahead.
I agree with you.
All right.
And that's why I said, you can't, there's a provision in the city code for the mayor. And the mayor is the figurehead of the city. He conducts the city council meetings. The mayor has no more authority to discipline a city council member than any of you sitting up here have. He just doesn't have that authority by statute or under your city code. So he has the right, if you act out while you're at a meeting, he has the right to gavel you into to order, and if you refuse to be gavelled to order, he has the right to have you removed. That, the mayor does have that power. But if you act up outside of a meeting, a city council meeting, and any committee chair has that same authority during the conduct of their committee, if he acts up under that, then outside of that, then the mayor doesn't have the authority, nor does the committee chair have that authority to discipline any member in any way, shape, or form.
Alderman Woods?
I'm not trying to make this a battle, and most of this is about common sense. I'd be, to Alderman Lazara's point, it's a lot to read. You have to be a little sick and want to read it. But really, in the city's ordinance, it really, if you pare it down, the area that we're talking about probably is only 15 to maybe 20 pages. I would be okay with pulling out those particular pages if you wanted to put that together in a booklet, instead of adding words and expanding on what's being said and slightly interpreting some of the stuff to make it easier for everybody else, so that it is, you don't have to go searching through whatever, how many 1,000 pages are in this document. That would make more sense to me than where we're at now. I understand that people ask you to do this, and there's almost that you feel that need to create a document. I'm not saying you did, but I think if we just pulled out those portions of the city ordinance that already address the council's powers, the city's powers, the city manager's powers, and some of the other things in there, you could make a short document that just referred you back to this document, and not, as opposed to creating another standalone document, if you will.
Mr. Bond?
Yeah, and so the language doesn't exactly mirror your code or the municipal code, is language that comes from case law. I didn't just make that up. I mean, we took, and maybe there was a little paraphrasing from the case law, because grammatically it didn't fit, but that's where it's coming from, is that the idea. But that's not a bad idea. And then one thing you are probably all aware of is your code is outdated. Your code needs to be updated, and your code needs to be revised. And that's on the strategic plan, that's in the works. But it's a big task to do, because you've got a lot of things that actually are inconsistent with state statute. But what you're talking about is what I did, not for the purpose of creating an additional document. What I tried to do is to try and make it a simplified version of exactly what you were talking about. And that's why I gave you some of the other sections of the code that I make reference to, and the state statute. But not all of them. I just gave you the ones that I thought were germane to this. But the purpose of it is just to say, okay, it's tapered down. It gets the essential requirements for conducting yourself as a council. So, the concern of doing it the way you've suggested, which is how I started out, to be honest with you, was then, one, it's a reiteration of what already exists, and it may not be as useful. Let me put it this way, it's as useless as the current code, because it's not referenced, it's not utilized, because you have to look in several different sources. And in order for somebody to say, how should I conform my conduct, how should I guide my conduct, and it's not designed to be the moral compass. We can't regulate ethics and morality. That can't happen. The government doesn't have that ability. You don't have the ability to regulate anyone's conduct other than your own, from a moral and ethical standpoint. But what this was designed to do is to say, okay, let's take all that, let's put it in a document that is usable without the need for referring to multiple sources to see why that is. It is because there's legal authority for it to be that way, and it's very simple, very readable, very clear, so that there's nobody on this council can say, oh, I can't do that, I didn't know about that, I didn't know that was a violation. And then, when we get to the rules, the municipal code says, the city council shall determine its own rules of proceeding, and the city council shall punish its members for disorderly conduct. And what, constitutes 2/3 of the aldermen then holding office have the authority to do that. So, it's a pretty high standard when you're talking about the enforcement, and all you need to do is say, we need to get a set of rules we all agree are the minimum daily requirements for us discharging our duties as aldermen when it comes to governing our conduct. And that's really what the thrust of this, and that's what I tried to accomplish with that. Maybe I failed, but that was what I was trying to accomplish with the direction that was given to me by the council.
Mr. Woods?
I'm going to go back to your statement of making it easy. And so we know it's there. I have, again, issue when you add to it. I mean, we're creating new things. I didn't know that, we were here to write new ordinances. If that's what we're here to do, I mean, I would like a little more time for debate and discussion on what it is before I impose that on myself. And I'm thinking of, as Alderman Lozara said, the next guy and the next guy and the next guy and the next guy. You put a lot of work into this, and I get it, this is good conversation, but a lot of it's gonna come back to whatever it is we're trying to solve. If nobody takes the reins and tries to solve it, I don't care what you write on the piece of paper. And since there aren't any earth-shattering new things that you added to it, I don't see what's gonna make the change, except for this muddying the water a little more, that we have an extra document to put on the shelf. The fact that you wrote it means we gotta reference it, and then cross-reference that with the city ordinance already.
Mr. Woods, or Bond?
Well, in fact, the adoption of the rules is a legislative function, and that's specifically conferred to the city council by law. And that's what you do. You adopt ordinances, and this is part of that legislative function. And it wasn't designed to muddy the waters. It was designed to provide clarity to waters that may be muddied because there's slightly different language in the municipal code than in our city code, and in one section of our city code versus another section of our city code. So the goal and the objective, whether I've hit the mark or not, is at the end of the day, you need to have something that provides that kind of clarity in a simple, simplified, usable format or document. And if you don't want to include it in your city code, and as Alderman Lazara said, these are, just our aldermanic handbook, but I think it has to have the buy-in of everybody. You have to say, this is the aldermanic handbook that our lawyer and people who've looked into this, those of you who've looked at it, say are consistent with our statutory responsibilities by state statute. Are we all in on this? And if the answer is yes, now you've got some teeth, because you're right, it means nothing if there's no teeth. I tell my kids to go to bed, and they don't want to go to bed, they stay up all night, and I let them stay up all night. That rule of them going to bed at 10 o'clock means nothing. It's a meaningless rule. But when I turn the lights off and lock them in their room, now that rule means something. I wouldn't do that, by the way, if I'm being taped here. But my dad would, I wouldn't have. But you know what I'm saying? But that's where it comes out. That's where it's gonna come, is when you get to the point. But here's what I'm trying to provide you, is the hope is that you'll get a document that is easily accessible, usable to everybody, regardless of your background, you and those in the future. The former mayor used to come in and with a big pair of cowboy boots and mud still on it from out doing whatever he was doing in the field. I mean, so you've got, all kinds of different backgrounds that people are gonna come to this with differing degrees of their interest in the legal part of it and so on. You want to say, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're a lawyer. It doesn't matter if you do landscaping or you do a truck driver. Everybody should, these are simple enough that everybody should understand that there should be, I shouldn't have to look to, the municipal code. I shouldn't have to look to our city code. I need to have that as a reference, but I shouldn't have to read that every time I want to decide, is this the proper conduct for me, or is this the proper conduct for one of my colleagues? You should be able to go to a source, say here, yes, it's very clear, we're all in agreement that these are the rules are going to govern, we're going forward, we never have to revisit it again, and hopefully our successors in the future won't. But if there is somebody who's not following their statutory or the oath that they took, and you can point, you as a council can point to them and say, you didn't do this. Our rules that we all agreed to said to do this, you didn't do it, so guess what? Now we've got 2/3 of us say that you didn't do it, and we're gonna take some action. We're not just gonna let it go, we're gonna take action against you. And so that's sort of the, where it would go, and the hope is you never have to get to that point. But you can't, unless you have clarity of the rules, people have to be put on notice what is permissible and what isn't permissible, and they shouldn't, I agree, they shouldn't need a law degree to make that determination.
Alderman
Put me out of
Wesley.
business.
I have some personnel questions that I want to ask, but I can't ask them here because it belongs in executive session.
Okay?
And, everyone probably violated these rules in one way or another as an alderman, somewhere, some way, somehow. So, it could be joking as a conversation with someone, then you violated a rule. So, I would like to make a motion to table on the rules,
Second.
until I get my discussion with the city manager. Because there are some things, how this city is run, like, go to department head, then the department head will push you to someone else. Now I'm talking to an employee, and then the discussion could get somewhere else, and now I violated a rule, even though department head pushed me to that person. So,
Mr. Ron?
Well, I'll respond to it, although motion to table is not debatable. In response to it, if you've gone through the chain of command, the employees have to go the chain of command up. They go from the bottom up. You have to go the chain of command from the top down. And the manager is saying, I'm deferring you to the department head. If the department head says, listen, I can get you a quicker answer by going to that person directly, then he's made that determination. Not you. You as an alderman can't make that
could I-
determination. That's a bad practice, and I think Mr. Murmas is gonna suggest to his department heads that they not do that. They gather the information that an alderman wants, and they provide a reply to you.
I would love to sit here and debate with you on that right now, but I got a motion to table. So I'm going by your rules.
And those are the proper rules.
There's no more questions. This is on table.
Voting on his motion, or
Well, there was a motion and a second.
that's for a roll call vote?
Alderman Lazara.
Yes.
Alderman Jacob.
Could we clarify the motion? Is it's just to table this till we talk to the?
Right.
Yes.
Correct.
Alderman Catalano.
Yes.
Alderman Sismarski.
No.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
Yes.
Alderman Woods.
Yes.
Alderman Eugene Wesley.
Yes.
There are no items on, or is there any items for considering for future meetings? No. Alderman Wesley?
Mr. Mayor, tonight on our, maybe this is out of order here, but I didn't know we started sending out letters if people didn't, set up a appointment to set up to look at their, sump pump connections. When did that start? Is that a policy? First one I seen.
Yeah, we've been doing that for a couple of years, and that's our I&I program.
And is this a violation if they don't respond? That we're going to give these people a ticket?
Mike?
Again, the goal of the I&I program is for compliance. The council stated that as fact when we've talked about it in this very room. So I would say that the goal of an I&I program is compliance, and it's been the same goal for as many years as we've been doing it.
So you give them a ticket?
That's all I got. Motion adjourned?
One more question.
Second.
Did I get my question or no? You're the chair.
Go ahead.
Mr. Manager, I know we're talking about the ash trees soon, very soon, very, very soon, hopefully. And gonna probably need some extra money for that. Would that go under the finance committee or would it go under public works?
As I stated at the last committee meeting before this meeting, I aim to serve, and serve I will. It will be at the next committee meeting, the ash tree discussion. We could probably put that under Public Works or Finance. It really doesn't matter. I mean, if we're going to ask for more money, it could go under Finance, a general ash tree overview, Public Works. I mean, we'll just administratively, we'll put it on the agenda. I just don't know which one per se right now.
Whatever one, I would like it on whatever one gets it done faster.
Either one, it's still coming on the 10th, so October
Oh.
10th.
You seconded adjournment already, so it's adjourned, right? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Now that you're adjourned, I should have taken my seat up there.